This is a high school geometry lesson in inverse functions of trigonometric functions. First off, why do we call them inverse? How weird. Well, it's not inverse in the sense of reciprocal. It's inverse in the sense of opposite, or backwards, or that kind of stuff. You'll recall that the trigonometric tables, look something like this. Back in the days, when dirt was young and so was I, this is how we did them. We didn't have calculators. They didn't exist. So I hadn't hardly even heard of inverse functions. When I started teaching, I thought, what are they talking about? Inverse? What do they mean? They tell you the reciprocal. Is it back? Is it reciprocal? No. It's not reciprocal. It's just inverse in the sense of backwards, because that's kind of how you work it. The way I worked it, or the way that you'd be working it if you use the table, and really sometimes it's easier just to use the table, is you get normal trigonometric ratios. You say, I want, say, the sine of 20 degrees. So you look to 20 degrees and get the decimal. You have the degrees and you want the decimal. But what if I worked out my ratio in my triangle and I saw that the ratio was 3420, and I knew it was a sine because I'd worked it. It was the opposite over the hypotenuse, and so I look here at 3420, and so I would do it backwards and say, oh, it must be a 20-degree angle. Yep, it's a 20-degree angle. Okay? So it's backwards in the sense of when you work it in the table, you do it backwards. So that's the sense in which it's talking about inverse. It's not talking about reciprocal. Okay? So the inverse trig ratios are here. And again, this is the same diagram I used in the others. I've put them all here. They're called arctangent, arcsine, arccosine. When you pronounce it, don't say to the -1. That just kind of sounds like you don't know what you're doing. Because -1 is a way of talking about inverse, but it really doesn't fit. It's just terminology in this point, okay? But it's the terminology that's enshrined on the calculator. Right here. Oh, you can't see it. There you go. Still can't see it. Now you can see it a little bit. The blue shift second key is tangent -1, and that's how it's written on the calculator. So that's how everybody thinks about it now that we have a calculator. The more proper way to say is arctangent. Please don't say tan to the -1. But anyway, if you do, I guess I'll deal with it. But arctangent, arcsine, and arccosine. So again, with this, it's you have the ratio and you need the angle. So you'd put in the ratio, plug into the calculator, and it will give you the angle. Just like when I said, if you have the ratio, you just look it up and see what the angle is. So for these simple ones, truthfully, it's just easier to look at the table, but you do it whichever way you want. So for the inverse trig ratios, it's I have the decimal or the ratio, and I need the angle, and you just work it backwards. Okay? So make sure you make a note of this. Let's look here at working on some of them. Solving right triangles. Okay. Solving the right triangle means to get to know every side and every angle. That's what it means to solve. It's to have every side and every angle. Let's look at this one right here. How are we going to plot? So let's see. What do we know? We got to know the other two sides and the other angle. We know 40. We know 90. Okay. And we know 8. Well, relative to the angle at M, I know the angle measure and the hypotenuse. Okay, so let's say I want to find the cosine first. That would be the adjacent. So I want the adjacent. I have the hypotenuse and I know the angle. Okay, well, I know the angle and I want to find the ratio, don't I? Okay, so I know that the cosine of 40 degrees is equal to adjacent which I don't know, over hypotenuse, which I do. Solve for x. So we'll be solving this. This one doesn't actually involve the inverse functions. You'll solve it out as you've done the others. You'll come out here that the side length ML is equal to 6.1. Excuse me. Then you can do it again, but next time you'll do the sine, because you got to get all the sides right. So the sine, which is the opposite over the hypotenuse, the sine of 40 degrees would be don't know over 8. Solve for it, it'll be 8 times the sine of 40 equals x, and x will be approximately 5.1. How do you get the angle? Well, they got to add up to 180, so the measure of angle, the measure of angle K must be 60 degrees. Okay. You've now solved the triangle. You found all the sides and all the angles. Well, let's look at one that you don't know any angles, that all you're going to have is sides, which means you can get a ratio. Let's look at this one right here. Okay. You want to find all the sides. You want to find the other side of the angle. Well, you can find that side. That's Pythagorean theorem. 12 squared plus 9 squared equals c squared. And if you look at that real close, you don't even have to work it. Tell me why you don't really have to work it. Because it's a Pythagorean triple. Divide by 3. 3, 4, 5. 3 times 3, 4 times 3, 5 times 3. The missing side length AC is 15. Okay, well, how are you going to find out the angles? Okay, well, you know those two. You can use any of the Trig functions that you want. Since I have those two, I'll do relative to C. It's opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. Okay, that's tangent. Tangent. The arc tangent. Because I know the ratio opposite over adjacent, 12 over 9, is equal to the angle measure. Oh, okay. Well, we can put that into the calculator, and you know what we're going to get? We will get that x is equal to 53.1 degrees, approximately. Okay. So, that's how you do it. Again, how would you put it into the calculator since you're not used to that yet? Let's make sure you can. So, you do it like this. If you can see it, you would do second tangent, which is going to give you the inverse tangent symbol. And then, 12 over 9 is supposed to reduce to 4 over 3, right? But you know what, your calculator doesn't care. It's going to give you the same thing anyway. So you can do 12 divided by 9, and that'll give you 53.1. So that's how it works. Okay, here you go. Try each one of these. Give them a go, and I'll give you the answers. Pause it and look at it and attend to it. Okay, here's the answers. Check how you're doing. Make sure you know how to do it. Okay, let's look at a problem. I like to think of good old Mr. T's nursery when I think about this problem. In order to load T's nursery, I don't know if any of y'all even remember T's nursery. Near the school, there's a small park, and the name of it just escaped me, right there at Bel Air in Newcastle, kind of behind and back from the school. And it's a nice, pretty little park of the city of Bel Air. That property was T's nursery, which was owned by the T's family. Mr. T was a kind man. He was he's always good to me. I always went there, and their plants were always good. He donated some of the trees when the school was opened. That was really kind of him to do that. And since various reasons, I had to sell off the business. So let's see what we've got here. In order to unload clay easily, the body of a dump truck must be elevated to at least 55 degrees. If the body of the dump truck is 14 feet long and has been raised to 10 feet, will the clay pour out easily? Okay, you're saying, like, here's kind of my little diagram. Mr. T's there, pulling his truck. He's got this dump truck, and the dump truck raises up. You know, it's got a little pump here that raises it up, you know, a little hydraulic pump or something like that, that makes it so that he can dump out the clay. You're saying, like, why do I care? Well, let's think about that. If it's not at a sufficient angle, then to get it out, you've got to take one of your people who work for you up in there with the shovel and shovel it off. And it's on an incline, and they're going to hurt themselves. We hope not, but it's too easy to. Shoveling it when the machine can do it for them, you don't want them to get hurt, so you want to get the truck. Something like you said, you went off, you said, I'm going to buy a new truck, say Mr. T's, or you're going to buy a new truck for Mr. T's. And you say, you go to the truck dealership, you know, and they say, this is a really good truck. It'll elevate to 55 degrees. That's all you need for anything. Then it would work. But say the salesperson, it really isn't quite sure, and he says, yeah, I think it'll dump out clay just fine. Well, you know, you're going to spend a lot of money on a truck that doesn't dump clay. You need to use a little trigonometry and figure it out. Okay, so how would we do that? Think of this as a triangle here, and it's got to be 55 degrees. Do we know if this is 55 degrees? Otherwise, we don't want to buy the truck. What do we know about it? We know that it raises it 10 feet. This is a right angle, we're presuming. And that the bed of the dump truck is 14 feet long. Here's the bed of the truck. Okay? So what do we have here then? We want to know the angle, and we have two sides. Okay, relative to this angle, where are they located, the ones we know? This one that we know is opposite. This one that we know is hypotenuse. We know opposite, we know hypotenuse, that is sine. So this will be arc sine of opposite over hypotenuse. Punch it in the calculator or look in the chart backwards, and you're going to find out it's about 45.6 degrees. Don't buy the truck. You're not going to be able to deliver your clay. Okay? Let's take a look at this one. Y'all work this one. Okay? Pause it and read it and work it. Remember, the line of sight is at the person's eye, looking straight across parallel with the ground. Line of sight, okay, is the normal line of sight. Okay, that's the normal position. And then you elevate or depress relative to your eye. You start with your normal vision, straight across, and look either down or up. So figure this out. Pause it. Okay. Here's the answers. I hope that's what you're getting. Okay, here's another one. Theater sign. Read it and see how you do, then I'll show you how to do it. Pause it for a moment. Okay, and here is the solution. And here endeth the lesson.